I guess that's prayer time is over and she quits playing.
I lost my place.
I want to take this opportunity this morning to introduce you. Most of you know Dr. Allan Thompson, who is the Director of Missions, and I believe now over 27 churches in this association. Is that not correct?
38.
How many?
38.
38. Well, you know, I'm getting old and I've got an excuse. But he's graciously been able to find time out of a very busy schedule to be a part of our service here this morning. Many of you already know him. He's a very exceptional individual, very talented, and a very busy man. I can say no more about him than he's in charge here today, Dr. Thompson.
I'm hoping the Lord's in charge, not me, that's for sure. Good morning.
Good morning.
I called Roy yesterday and said, I'd like to come visit. Of course, every time I say that, he says, well, why don't you just go ahead and preach? Which is a lot better advance notice than the last time when I came, and I was sitting over there. He said, why don't you go ahead and preach? So I said, well, I want to share a couple of words before you started. Just a little update of what's going on in the association. I have been involved the last several months with Northgate Baptist Church up in Beckley, which has been, their pastor retired in January after 20 years being there, Craig Stevens. And instead of going pell-mell into getting another pastor real quickly, I convinced them that it was time to do a transition. We need to go slow and do a transition team. So we've been looking at all the different areas of their church, the heritage, the leadership, connections, their particular unique mission for their church and their future before they started their search, which they're starting this month. And they have an interim up there. And so I've been working with them. That's where most of my efforts have been in the last several months. I've been off the road to the other churches and been concentrating on that one. We have a new pastor at First Baptist Princeton. David Dockery, many of you have heard David Dockery's name before, a wonderful gentleman who passed away in the fall of 2019. That church also took the same approach of go slow, and they had a transition of almost a year before they started their search. And 2 months ago, see, what is this, July? In June, on D-Day, on June 6th, they had a secret ballot. And you know, most Baptist churches, if you have a secret ballot on anything, you wonder what the votes are going to be. They voted 109 votes to 0 to bring Jason as their pastor, Jason Spade, which I find remarkable. And Roy used the word miracle. In a Baptist church, even if they're voting on the color of the paint for the foyer, you won't get a unanimous vote on anything, which I thought was just remarkable. Jason is going to be a wonderful young man. I hope you get to meet him sooner or later. He's 48. I say young because I'm 68. But just a great, great guy. And he's coming from a larger church, as a matter of fact. So I think this is of God that he's come there. And then up the road, you probably know already that in April, First Baptist Hinton called Chris Campbell as their pastor after a long search. And so most of our pulpits are full as of this moment, except for Northgate. And I'm glad to be back on the road, getting out and visiting our churches. This is July of 2021. I've already announced to our leadership and our pastors that July 1st, 2023 will be my last day as the Director of Missions, because I will be 70 by then and will celebrate my 10th anniversary, which I promised the search committee when I came I'd give them 10 years. And so we're going to be looking at starting next summer a search committee for my position, and that means I'll probably be in every one of our churches at least 2 more times, I hope, before my rotation's over with. We plan on staying in West Virginia. My 96-year-old mother-in-law is out at Glenwood Park, and they're in Princeton. And lo and behold, my sister-in-law, one of Jana's sisters, is moving here to Princeton this summer. Next month, I'll fly to Dallas and drive a U-Haul full of her stuff over here. So we're not going anywhere. We're going to be around for a while. We've come to love West Virginia very much. This is just for free. He was reading from Psalm 18. If you don't have one, this is a little psalm, I know you can't see it. It's called 5 Psalms. If you just want to find an app, it's a little simple, it's not very big, an app to put on your phone, it's called 5 Psalms. And it comes up, whatever the day is, like today is the 18th, as soon as you punch the button, Psalm 18 comes up, and then Psalm 48, and then Psalm 78. And so they have 5 Psalms for every day that you can read in whatever translation you want to read it in. So as soon as he says Psalm 18, I just punch that, and bang, here came Psalm 18. So I use that a lot of times for my Bible readings in the mornings when I'm in the office. Just thought I'd mention that. We're going to do something today that Roy's probably never done in this pulpit. And I see this rock up here. And you can explain that later. But we're going to vote today on which sermon to hear. So it's a Baptist church. We practice congregational polity. So we're going to vote on which sermon to hear today, okay? So we have the Pass the Torch sermon, or we have the Summer Blockbuster sermon. Okay? And you're going to vote, and I'm going to do whatever one you want. So who wants to hear the Pass the Torch sermon? Let's see. Okay, that was a real winner, though. Who wants to hear the Summer Blockbuster? I knew that was going to happen. All right. Turn in your Bibles, if you will, to the 2 Kings 3. 2 Kings 3. This is one of my all-time favorite stories in Scripture. It is just so much fun to walk through this. We're going to read the entire chapter. And we're going to read, preach, is what I call it. We're going to read, preach through this, and we're going to kind of act it out. Because this is just an amazing story. Got a great cast of characters that you guys are going to help me with, their names. And we're going to be walking through this together and seeing God do some pretty amazing things in this chapter. This is a one-point sermon, by the way. It's just going to take a little while to get it out, but this is a one-point sermon. The point is this, folks. God will do his part. God's going to do his part. And you are going to have a chance, an opportunity to join in with his work if you take that opportunity. Does God need us to do his work? No. He is sovereign. He is almighty. He does not need us to do his work. He allows us. He invites us to be a part of his work, to be a part of his kingdom. But we have to do it on his terms and in his time. And so that's basically the sermon. So if you want to go ahead and dismiss, I guess we can do that, but that's the sermon right there. So we're going to expand that. But first, let's look at 2 Kings 3, and let's find these characters, and some of them are really characters. We're talking characters here in this chapter. I'm telling you. So the first one is in verse 1. Now Jehoram, can you say that word, Jehoram? Jehoram was the son of Ahab. Folks, Ahab was one of the nastiest kings in the Old Testament. He was evil with a capital E. Did everything disgusting you can imagine. And this is his offspring. So what do you expect out of this one? Not much, right? Okay, so Jehoram, the son of Ahab, became king over Israel at Samaria. Now remember, at some point in the Old Testament, the kingdom divides. And there's Judah, the lower kingdom, and there's Israel, the northern kingdom. He's the new king over the northern kingdom. And he did it in the 18th year of, you'll love this one, Jehoshaphat. Can you say that? Say it with me. Jehoshaphat, king of Judah. So Jehoshaphat's already been kinging down here. He's been the king for 18 years. He knows what he's doing. Jehoram just became king, and he got it from his evil daddy. And he reigned 12 years. In verse 2, guess what? No surprise. He did evil in the sight of the Lord, though not like his father and his mother, Jezebel, for he put away the sacred pillar of Baal, which his father had made. Well, so that's good news, I guess. He's not as nasty and evil as Daddy was. But, verse 3, nevertheless, he clung to the sins of Jeroboam. Can you say Jeroboam? Jeroboam. All these J's here, okay? Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, which he made Israel sin, he did not depart from them. Now, the sins of Jeroboam That's another whole sermon. Because when you go through, I've gone through 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings, and it's this common thread all through all 4 of those books, what the sin of Jeroboam was. And the sin of Jeroboam was, and basically, he said, look, you don't need to go down to that temple in Jerusalem. We'll build one of our own. And we don't need to celebrate all those festivals like Moses told us to in the Torah and the Pentateuch. We'll make up our own. And we don't need those priests down at the temple in Jerusalem. Why, we'll just buy some. Anybody want to be a priest? I'm serious. This way it goes down. That was the sin of Jeroboam. I've stood on the place where his fake temple was, there in the city of Dan in the northern part of the northern kingdom. Love to have some of you come with us. We still have a few spots left. We're going back to the Holy Land in February of next year. So we have this pretty sorry king who's just become king, and a pretty good king, we'll find out later, in Jehoshaphat. But wait, there's more. Verse 4, we get another player. Now, Mesha, that's a little easier, isn't it? Can you say that? Mesha. Now, Mesha, king of Moab, was a sheep breeder. Well, that's what every king ought to be. So he's a sheep breeder, and he used to pay the king of Israel 100,000 lambs and the wool of 100,000 rams. That was being paid tribute. So you got to see, here's Israel, here's Judah, and here's the Dead Sea, what you and I call the Dead Sea, and Moab's over here. And because Ahab had a grip on Moab, he used to pay him tribute. But now Ahab's gone. He's dead. Papa's gone. Verse 5. But when Ahab died, the king of Moab, this is Mesha, rebelled against the king of Israel. And King Jehoram went out of Samaria at that time and mustered all of Israel. Now you're going to find out, I don't have a whole lot of respect for him. You'll see that in a few minutes. And King Jehoram, then he went and he sent word to Jehoshaphat down in Judah, the king of Judah, saying, the king of Moab has rebelled against me. Will you go fight with me against Moab? He just really commands a lot of respect, can't you tell? And Jehoshaphat said to him, I will go up. I am as you are, my people as your people, my horses as your horses. Now the reason he's saying this is because he made a pact earlier on with Ahab, a military pact. So he's going to honor it. Even though he doesn't honor Jehoram, he's going to honor the pact he had with his dad. Okay, so they're getting ready to go whoop up on Moab. And verse 8. Well, which way should we go? Jehoram said. And Jehoshaphat answered, the way of the wilderness of Edom. E-D-O-M. Israel's up here, Judah's down here, Dead Sea in the middle. Moab up here, Edom down here. Now we know there's this big stone in the Louvre in Paris called the Moabite stone that was carved by guess who? Mesha. So we have archaeological proof that he was actually a king. And it shows on that stone that most of Moab's defenses were up on the north to keep a northern invasion from coming in. So that meant most of their defenses were up there north. So that means down here would be easier to conquer because they're going to go through Edom. Okay. Sounds good so far, doesn't it? Verse 9. So the king of Israel went with the king of Judah and the king of Edom. So look who else joins up. So the king of Edom gets in on this. He thinks, hey, I'm going to get some help. I don't like these Moabites anyway, so I get to whoop up on them too, and I get some reinforcements. This is great. And they made, I love verse 9, and they made a circuit of 7 days' journey, and there was no water for the army or for the cattle that followed. Now, if you've ever been around the Dead Sea, there's a reason they call it the Dead Sea. It's dead around there, folks. It is nothing growing. The Dead Sea itself is 13 times saltier than the ocean. It is the lowest open spot on the face of the earth. It's 1,286 feet below sea level. It's always hot. That's why when we always go in February, so we have a chance not to melt when we go see Masada and Engedi and Qumran and the baptismal sign of Jesus and those kind of things. So they go around the Dead Sea, which is in what we call, when the New Testament calls it the wilderness. When it says that Jesus went out in the wilderness, or John the Baptist was preaching in the wilderness, this is what we're talking about. There's nothing out there. And most of the times, armies and people would walk along what's called a wadi, W-A-D-I, the dry riverbed. Because that was because they didn't have roads back then so much as they just had dry riverbeds, and that would always lead you to somewhere else of civilization. So they're out there. It doesn't look like they planned very well for this, does it? I mean, 7 days into this campaign, they got no water. And you can survive several days without food, but you're not going to survive very long without water. So verse 10, the king of Israel does what he knows best, and that is complains. Then the king of Israel, this is Jehoram, says, "Alas, for the Lord has called these 3 kings to give them into the land of Moab." This is like some bad opera. I mean, he's worthless. But Jehoshaphat, instead of griping, and what did he do? What's the first thing he said? Alas, for who called us out here? Who's he blaming this on? The Lord. Isn't that pretty typical of us? We get ourselves in a bind, and who are we going to start griping at? Thank God we had a Jehoshaphat out there, verse 10, the king. Verse 11, but Jehoshaphat said, "Is there not a prophet of the Lord here, that we may inquire of the Lord by him?" And one of the kings of Israel, by the way, the king of Israel, Jehoram, one of his servants said, Elisha, the son of Shaphat, is here, who used to pour water on the hands of Elijah. And Elisha succeeded Elijah. We don't know if he came along with one of the groups as an advisor. We don't know if he was out there on his own personal pilgrimage. We don't know if he was following from afar because he wanted to see what these yo-yos were going to do out there without water. We don't know. He's just there. And then verse 12, Jehoshaphat says, "The word of the Lord is with him." That's important. So, I think it's interesting that it says, verse 12, the king of Israel and Jehoshaphat and the king of Edom went, where? Went down to him. Now, this is already demeaning. And we're talking 3 kings. And they're having to go down to talk to the prophet. And I can just hear Jehoram griping all the way, like, we need water. What's this prophet going to do to help us get water? He's a man of God. Yeah, good, and all that, but we need water. We don't need a prophet. We need help. So, they go down to him. Verse 13, Elisha, what a man of either insanity or courage, said to the king of Israel, "What do I have to do with you?" Not about you, but I don't know that I would be speaking to a king in that manner. That's pretty bold. What do I have to do with you? Go to the prophets of your father and to the prophets of your mother. meaning those prophets of Baal, those false prophets.